Good afternoon, church. I've been reading through the family study these last couple of weeks, and I thought I would do a quick video just holding together the four passages that are involved in these last 2 weeks family study. You will see as you look at the four, I hope you've noticed as well, that the word covenant comes out time and time again. Wait, look at my shadow, look at my finger. Anyway, covenant. In the Jeremiah passage, it comes out lots about a new covenant, and then in the two New Testament readings, a lot about the blood of a covenant in this taking of the blood of the bread and the wine. And so as we look at these four passages, and I've done a little diagram which you'll see in a minute on a timeline. I thought I would talk just briefly. First of all, what is a covenant? Here's my Arbeitsvertrag. That'll be the end of my German. A covenant is really the coming together of, you could say, two parties where they're going to agree on a relationship. It's going to lay down the privileges and the responsibilities of each party. It's a little bit like my work contract here. If I could understand it, it would tell me all the things I should be doing and all the privileges, all my responsibilities and my privileges. And it will tell you then here on this page how much I get every month. No, we'll not open that one. But yeah, you get the idea. Here's a work contract, and so God is initiating not a work contract with His people, but a relationship, and they are going to come together. If we go right back to the time of Moses in the Old Testament, God begins a covenant with them. Here it's in Exodus 24. Moses has just been up to God and has got all of the laws that God desires. And he reads them before the people. And I've kind of summarized it like this. Really, God had delivered them from slavery, and He was going to bless them as a nation. And in response, man was going to trust and obey His word. And so there we go. The beginning, here we have the sacrifice, which is really them consecrating, devoting themselves to God, and when Moses reads out the law, they begin by they say, "We will." Essentially, they sign the contract. "We will," they say. Now, fast forward some time. Let me move the earth here a wee second. And you get to Jeremiah. And here's Jeremiah, more or less amongst the ruins of his nation, and he comes with a message from God. But first, I guess we could ask ourselves, what happened? Wasn't it going to be that God was going to deliver them from slavery, which He did, but also bless them as a nation? Why weren't they experiencing this blessing? They were about to be carted off back into slavery, and they definitely weren't experiencing God's blessing. And really, the short answer is that they didn't hold up their side. They did not trust and obey God's word. They actually remained unrepentant, and they deliberately sinned against God and went against Him. But Jeremiah comes with this amazing new revelation from God that He was going to bring in a new covenant. Although it had its roots back in the time of Abraham, Jeremiah is pointing to a future time when God's going to establish a new relationship on slightly different grounds. He is going to not just deliver them from slavery, He's going to go right to the root of the matter and deliver them from sin. And He was going to bring them into a full experience to really know Him and experience Him, a saving relationship. And on their side, they were to trust and obey God. Man was to trust and obey God. You cannot have a relationship with God and have your sin. However, in this case, God was also going to change their heart so that they would obey. As we remember back, what was the problem with the old? It was man failed to live up to his side. Well, here is God ensuring that both sides of the covenant are kept. He was going to change man's heart, and He was going to deliver His Spirit, pour out His Spirit, and man would then be really working out what God was working in him. And so here you have, essentially, Jeremiah is saying, God says, "I will." Just like the Israelites said, "We will." And you can see that in the passage, what I've underlined in green, how many times it says "I will." And up in Exodus 4, how they said twice, "We will do it, we will do it," in the heat of the moment. Now, one thing that's important in this that I just didn't mention was that when you begin a covenant, just like over here, there is this sacrifice. And with sacrifice, as is mentioned quite a lot in the passage, there is the blood. And it is really the, how would you say, the kick-off of the covenant. And Moses takes the blood, as the passage says, and he wipes it all over the altar, and he also then splashes it all over the people, sprinkles it on them. Now here, we can fast forward a little bit to our third passage. Go past Jeremiah, up the timeline, and you get to Jesus. Here he is sitting with his disciples. There's 11 of them now because Judas has left. And he's actually celebrating this very well-known feast that goes back to the time of the Israelites, where they were rescued from slavery. And here they're having this Passover. But Jesus takes this third cup, and he says, "This is the new covenant. Drink this. This is a new covenant. Represents a new covenant in my blood. In my blood." So here is Jesus saying, he is the one bringing in this new covenant that Jeremiah mentioned about. And he's about to leave this feast, and in just a few hours later, he's going to die on the cross. And just like the first covenant initiated or brought into effect with the spilling of blood, which would cover sin, Jesus, it's his blood, as he said in the feast, that's going to bring in this new covenant. This new covenant where people are delivered from sin and will have the experience of God, knowing God. And they can also experience God changing their hearts so that they will become honorable, obedient people. And this is what he said in Matthew 4, which I didn't show you. But anyway, there it is. And the final passage takes you to Paul. Paul in Corinthians 11. Here he is speaking to a community in Corinth. And he's basically telling them more or less to do the same thing as Jesus. He says, what the Lord has delivered to me. He is telling them that now, just like Jesus took the bread and the wine back in the Passover, the Christians are likewise to take the bread and the wine. Looks more like a sausage, but it's actually a bread. And they are essentially to repurpose this old feast, this old Passover feast. They're going to celebrate this as a way of remembering what Christ did on the cross. And what he says is, what you do, that when you do this, you are proclaiming that the Lord died and that he's going to return, because there's going to be a further event down later in the timeline when Jesus will come back and bring in the full, we will fully experience this new covenant forever. And so here we have this encouragement from Paul to say, we as local communities together are going to do this, and that's going to identify us as a people who our present confidence is related to a past event that has secured for us a future glory. And that's I think that is the significance of the Holy Communion in light, really, of this history of redemption, these two covenants, as related here, just in this simple diagram. Well, I hope that helps, and yeah, I hope you guys are doing well. Over and out.